at Penguin's nephew's bar mitzvah. Seems like she's doing pretty well.
You know she has HPV, right?
Most sexually active adults do.
Well, I have a new favorite cartoon now. What's up guys, Chris from the Review Cave here, and today I'm going to give you guys my full review of Harley Quinn from the DC Universe streaming service. Now, I know a lot of you are kind of hesitant to get into the DC Universe streaming service. If you just want to binge a show, you get I believe a 2-week free trial once you sign up, and then you can stop at any time. But I do think you should support the streaming service because the stuff they're pumping out is really great, especially what I'm talking about here today, Harley Quinn, which in my opinion is one of the best animated cartoons that come out of DC in a while. Young Justice, Batman the Animated Series, Teen Titans, Justice League, Batman Brave and the Bold, Batman Beyond. Those are amazing animated series over the years for DC, but Harley Quinn actually decided to do something different with it in the fact that it is a full-on comedy, despite it having a bit of a darker tone and a bit more violence and death and etc. But this is a series focusing around supervillains. Every other DC series we've seen has always focused on the heroes. Meanwhile, we never see the villains. And I'll be honest, one thing I want to characterize the series as is, like the guys at the In Tank described on their review of this video,
the overall feel that I get from it is if Team 4-Star dubbed over a traditional Batman animated episode, but all of the random bullcrap and nonsense jokes that they make actually applied to the story.
And Harley Quinn does all that exceptionally well. Not to mention that the writing in this series is honestly really good. I enjoyed Harley's journey from breaking out from the Joker's shadow to be her own person and gather her own crew so she can prove herself in the world of villains. And the world that this series has created is honestly hilarious, and it can be a believable parallel universe to whatever other series you've seen. Not to mention all the wisecracks and jokes the main cast point out about what the hell's going on with this world, and not to mention how sometimes in comics you always think, hey, how come no one has found this place yet? It's so obvious that the villain's hiding here. We literally get a line like that in the first episode. Not to mention we get constant pop culture references in this series that are honestly, well, good jokes. Episode 5 of Harley Quinn literally focuses on the entire gang going into Harley's brain to try and figure some stuff out with her after she has like some sort of weird mental shutdown, and we end up getting to learn a bit more about Harley, and we also have Clayface, constantly reference movies, as the entire episode is basically one big compilation parody of every single dreamlike movie ever created, and it fits Clayface's character to actually say this because
I'm actually... Good fucking guy.
That's another thing I really do have to like, is how the characters of DC are portrayed in this series. Like Harley, you believe it's Harley Quinn because she is kind of crazy, but this version of Harley, I honestly believe, is more of an actual person. While in the comics, she is really cool. I do kind of like Harley Quinn at the fact that she is crazy, she's funny, and despite her not having any power, she's crazy athletic and acrobatic, and she can handle herself in a fight pretty well. Now, the one thing is that this world actually treats Harley like she is a human being. Some of the best episodes in this show are episodes that focus primarily on Harley and her own thoughts and mental state. Episode 1 is a good introduction to the series because it gives us Harley and Joker's relationship right off the bat, with Joker basically using Harley as essentially a gateway tool. Like when Batman shows up, he basically knocks her away to get in Batman's way so he can end up escaping, and then she goes to Arkham, and we end up getting this whole episode where Harley ends up having to learn what the hell Joker truly is and what he thinks of her, and essentially breaks out on her own, thus trying to have her create her own crew so she can prove herself to every other villain in Gotham City and the world, and hopefully get invited into the Legion of Doom. Which, let me say this, the Legion of Doom in this series is honestly hilarious, and how it's built. It's like it's an actual government organization. They hold press conferences, they have special events, they have voting parties to see who becomes new Legion members. It's honestly hilarious, and that's the funny thing about the Legion of Doom, since it's also right in the middle of Gotham City, and you're wondering, why doesn't the Justice League just show up and take down all the villains, since they are inside that one place at the same time the majority of the time? Not to mention, news anchors cover like actual relationships and stuff when it comes to heroes and villains, and the whole Nemesis thing is broadcast on actual TV. And this is a very interesting world that was created and well thought out, because while they are somewhat parodies of themselves, they do act exactly like they should, specifically Batman, because, you know, he's Batman. The way they portray every single character in this series is honestly very great. Poison Ivy is the first major character that is introduced to us with Harley, and is Harley's best friend. You really do love Poison Ivy because while everyone does consider Poison Ivy to be a villain or a pseudo-villain, she is technically an eco-terrorist who just wants to do good things for the environment. We can all respect that. And that's something that she constantly brings up multiple times when people constantly get the wrong idea of her being a quote-unquote villain. Hell, even the Legion of Doom wants to recruit her and she constantly refuses. I really do like her relationship with Harley because it is a believable friend-like relationship, especially since Ivy is the one that helps Harley break out of her shell and finally come to the realization that Joker is in fact an asshole. Ivy has said a couple of times in the series, Ivy is the only person in the world that she actually gives a shit about. I really do respect Ivy, because not only that, but throughout the series, we do in fact get a lot of good character moments. Harley is not a perfect character by any stretch of the imagination. She is susceptible to relapsing to how she used to be. We do end up seeing this in episode 9. She ends up joining the Legion of Doom, and when that happens, she ends up having to try and get her own gang out of doing a job for Bane. Which, I like to say this, the parodies for the villains are hilarious, especially Bane. Bane acts like a childish idiot who rages out about the slightest thing. Like, in episode 9 in specific, he actually rages out against someone who gets his name wrong at a smoothie joint, and he threatens to blow him up.
Good Lord, man! Oh, hey, Shark Guy, did we kill Todd?
Todd doesn't work Wednesday.
Oh, they must have changed the schedule.
Since this is a show about villains, you do kind of get a sense of their personality. And while I do believe that each villain is unique in their own right, this series turns them into simplistic parodies of themselves while still maintaining like the core appeal of said character. Like Scarecrow, he does sound confident and a bit childish when it comes to talking and explaining things.
Boss, maybe we build a giant maze, yeah? Dose the people in it with fear toxin.
Clayface is one of my favorite characters because in the comics, Clayface was just an actor who after an accident had his body turned into this specific clay thing where he can shapeshift and morph into whatever he wants, but it kind of drove him a bit insane for a bit, and then later on in DC Rebirth and New 52, Batman started to see potential in Clayface getting better and actually using his powers to help people. In this version, Clayface is not angry or psychotic because of his accident. In fact, despite him being a giant walking pile of clay, he literally takes the whole actor thing and embraces it to its max. In this series, Clayface is the definition of an overactor. In literally the 3rd episode of the series, where Harley recruits Dr. Psycho and Clayface is in charge of distracting this guy who Harley doesn't really like, is a villain and an asshole that Harley wants to rob from, and needed Dr. Psycho and Clayface's help. Clayface was supposed to just distract him with like a simple story, like, oh, I'm actually your son. He shapeshifts into like a mailman and basically crafts this entire story for the character. After this specific villain mentions like one specific detail that this quote-unquote son did not inherit from his mother, Clayface instantly changes it, specifically something sort of like the eye color, and when the guy actually sees this, he constantly comes up with constant crazy ideas like a hunch, snivel, a snaggletooth, a glass eye, one eye bigger than the other, something so elaborate that he just messes with the guy until he eventually just confronts him when he gets bored with it. And there are moments where Clayface, with his overacting, can end up breaking character, even when it's something insanely important, because every single character in the show is prone to messing up. And now I'm going to get into King Shark, who is literally the biggest change from the comics and other iterations of him, because in the comics and every other iteration, like in the CW show, he is usually just a giant man-eating shark monster who is insanely violent. But in this version, he is more of a hacker and tech-savvy guy who dresses nicely, and isn't technically a villain until he ends up joining Harley's crew. And yes, the guy does in fact eat people, rip them apart when it comes to it, and is prone to very short bursts of anger and violence. But he's overall a pretty chill dude, and he is a really nice guy who sticks by everyone else. Now, I do like one thing that Ivy does specify about Harley's character in around episode 7, comparing Harley to the Queen of Fables, essentially saying that the Queen of Fables is a full-blown villain, a bad guy. Harley basically tells Ivy that she herself is a villain and a bad guy, but Ivy does specify for Harley and the rest of the audience that Harley may be a bad guy, but she's a good person. Now, I know that seems like a type of contradiction there. However, this episode in particular does show the difference between Harley and other different villains in the Legion of Doom. While Harley will threaten to blow up people in the city, she won't actually do it. When it comes to trying to kill a hero or villains and their lackeys, that's fair game. But when it comes to innocent people, she literally says that that's a line that she isn't going to cross. This can actually show Harley's eventual turn into an anti-hero if they decide to go that route. But the fact that Harley does in fact have a type of line shows that she actually has somewhat of a heart, something that other villains in the show do not have. Specifically, the Joker. And let me just say this, the Joker in Harley Quinn, while in the finale, Harley does specifically summarize the Joker's entire character in a single sentence.
Remember how much fun you had in that costume?
No, I didn't have fun. You were the one having fun. It wasn't until I got away from you that I realized how deeply unfun being with you was. So I would rather blow myself up and take you with me than go back to being your sidekick and wearing that fucking costume!
That specific line being said, the Joker himself is the most asshole-ish version of the Joker in general. While the Joker does have a method to his madness, the vast majority of the time, in this one he literally kills and shoots everyone, villains and innocent people alike, for no reason whatsoever. The final episode shows that in spades, and I really do enjoy this version of the Joker because he is hilarious to watch. He is both hilarious to watch and also an actual threat to the entirety of Gotham by the end of the series. Now, with all the characters talked about that I want to talk about in this series and how they are technically parodies of each other or just better versions in the fact that they're more characterized and seen as actual people, what did I think of the overall story of the series? And honestly, for this first season, the story was pretty good. Everything was pretty much self-contained in a sense, leading up to the eventual Legion of Doom final episodes. But the one thing I really do have to stress in the one aspect is how the story, while it does focus on Harley and her crew, always keeps its focus on Harley, on her character, on her actions, and how she tends to think things through. And like I said earlier, episodes that primarily focus on Harley are honestly the best ones that I can really enjoy. One episode I really do enjoy was an episode where Harley ends up going back to her childhood home to talk to her mother after something happens between her and her friends, so she can try and get some sense of normalcy back into her life or stability, mainly just to be with someone that she knows cares for her. And this episode goes in depth into Harley's childhood and what helped shape her into the person that she is, and to the eventual creation of Harley Quinn when she inevitably meets the Joker. I do really enjoy this because we get to see how Harley's family does act. Her father is essentially a con man who makes a ton of weird deals with loan sharks and even the freaking mafia, and her mother is in fact an enabler for her father and everything he does. While she does love Harley, she does essentially break down when it comes to her husband every single time, which is the inevitability of an actual toxic relationship, which does somewhat mirror Harley's own relationship with the Joker throughout the entirety of the series, which Harley does essentially acknowledge, especially after she went through a whole weird relapse. And by the end of the series, she does overcome everything that, whatever feelings she does have left over for the Joker, which is a big milestone for Harley as a character. The story of Harley Quinn is Harley Quinn. Her character is honestly pretty well written. Her character arc is really great. She comes out on her own, trying to be the best villain she can be and join the Legion of Doom because those are where all the self-respecting villains are. And unironically, most of them are Batman villains, which is kind of hilarious since the Legion of Doom headquarters is in fact in the smack damn middle of Gotham City. Now, before I cap off this video, I know I was finished talking about the characters, but I just want to mention Commissioner Jim Gordon. He is hilarious.
Jim, I wasn't playing with it. It's the Riddler.
He is essentially a guy that's been overly consumed by an intensely stressful job. Hell, he literally considers Batman to be his best friend and the only person he can talk to about his own personal life, which Batman does not enjoy. Batman does see Jim as a good friend and a good cop. There are moments where Jim will use the bat signal to call Batman just to have a freaking heart-to-heart about his own shit that's going on when it comes to him and his wife.
You know, she's sleeping with someone else, and the worst part, I can't blame her. I mean, a woman can only go so long watching the dead eyes of her lover thrust atop her before she looks for something new.
So you didn't call me about the break-in or Wayne Enterprises?
What? No! Oh, this is about the breakdown of my marriage!
The signal is for emergencies.
Well...
Emergencies. You've abused it.
Look, my personal life is a mess right now, and I thought I could talk about it with my friend.
We're co-workers.
But Jim Gordon is the one thing that at first I was a little uneasy about, but as I continued watching every single interaction with Jim Gordon, I realized the whole point of this show is that it's a satire on the entirety of the DC universe, whether it comes to what villains end up doing, how specific things happen, like whenever a villain kills someone's entire family, if some member of the family survives, they somehow come into contact with some bizarre item or get into a specific accident, and they end up devoting their entire lives to revenge in order to take down whoever killed their entire family. This is something that the Queen of Fables states in episode 7, which is honestly a pretty solid episode. And not to mention a pretty satisfying conclusion, which leaves room open for season 2, which... overall, this is a really great series. Now, one thing I do have to state is that the animation and the soundtrack are really great. And the animation in particular, it does fit the show that they're in fact going for. It does kind of give you that feel from the Teen Titans in the early 2000s, mixed a bit with the more realistic look of the Young Justice series into a somewhat mishmash, which works for what they're going for. And I have to say, whenever there's action in this series, it's great. It's one of the few series that I will say I enjoyed throughout, and I had no real problems with it, even after rewatching it. I myself would have to give this, for a honest-to-God cartoon, an actual 10 out of 10 for me, because I enjoyed this series throughout. It kept me invested into the characters, the story, and the vast amount of comedy and satire and commentary of DC Comics continuity. Well, that is my review of Harley Quinn series. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm planning on busting out more review videos that aren't just about anime in the future. I mean, anime is essentially going to be the main content I post on this channel, but I do want to branch out a bit to other forms of media. Leave a comment below for whatever you want me to review next, if there are any suggestions, or if there's anything specific that I missed or got wrong, pointing out in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe and click that notification bell to get notified of new content when I upload. And also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at The Official Review Cave for updates on brand new videos. With all that said, hope you guys have an awesome day. Oh shit!